Um, Poi. Due.
Testing, testing. What in the hell is going on here? Oh, shit. Oh.
Hello?
Alert.
Hi.
Hello.
It's always terrifying when you zoom in like that.
It's always terrifying. That's
Yeah.
good to know.
Huh. How are you?
Doing good. Washing laundry. Getting paid.
Smart.
And trying to make something out of this that hang on just a sec. Sure. No problem. Come on, this right here? Oh, sweet Lord, Alabama. Sorry about that. Anyways, I had to help a customer take her shit out. She was frail. So do you have your cards out right now?
Yeah, I've got my cards. I got some blank ones ready.
Have you been doing anything with them today?
No, not really. Just been hanging around, trying to get, I don't know, breakfast and some chores settled away.
Nice.
Mm.
I got my coffee, breakfast. So what I've been trying to do here has led to a great amount of confusion, which could be a sign that a breakthrough is imminent. But I've established like isomorphism cards so that I could like, bring two subjects or processes together. Like I've sort of just kind of started making objects
Right.
that were in my field of experience and trying to like categorize them within each other. And then like I was like, okay, what am I experiencing right now? What's going on right now? Okay. Because it's like if the implicit goal, so I laid these down initially, you've got the notepad, you've got feedback, and then I wrote fractal correspondence, to try and that sort of hyperstitions like you applying a higher tiered meaning to then the goalposts, then the infinite fractal or an infinite fractal. I wanted that to be sort of like categorized under goalposts to try and and then it sort of like guides what I'm trying to play towards,
Right, right.
like I was writing down. But then it turns out that is
You're further along in this than I am then.
well, what I think I found was that trying to like if I'm trying to play towards exposing myself to the infinite fractal of my own self-reference, and it almost like precludes or prevents playing the game to turn into that the way that I want it to or something. Because I was like, okay, the point or like the place that you want it to take you to is never, it can't ever be explicit, it has to be implied by the relationships of what you set out. So
Right, right, yeah. So it's like really hard to describe. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like impossible to describe. Like that's why we just build like, they say a box, but I think it's more like a scaffolding that
Yeah, yeah.
like a mold that it gets filled in
Right.
perceptually. So I started off just like, okay, we got the senses. And this is just what I was doing today. We don't have to. I was okay. You have the senses, and those senses are experiencing the game, right? And then the game is a simulation of the mind, which is isomorphic with the senses.
Oh,
So
yeah, that's good. Yeah.
I was trying to build like a loop inside of the thing that would sort of like bring myself into it.
Yeah.
But it's not working at all. So, and like I said, I think that's because I my goal is to concrete or something. I don't
Right.
know.
I also think it's like it's not something that
So I
you
was
can
thinking,
understand by yourself. Like you almost need like it's all like if you put a person like alone, like in isolation, they'll just like go insane, like because they can't process that way. We have to like offload onto each other somehow or relate to each other somehow to get to whatever our personal goal is. Otherwise, like we're not going to make it. Like you can't be like a physicist inside of like a box by yourself, right?
right, and that also because I was reading the actual the book, The Glass Feed Game, and it sort of has this idea in it that the first people to have it were the musicians, and it was like this game of free associations that they would use to conduct uh, like symphonies or whatever. It kind of started off as just this one thing, but then like the mathematicians picked it up,
Or it
and
could go
then
back. You could go backwards, I guess, with like Pythagoras. It starts as math and like Pythagoras and his like weird like religious cult or whatever. They like sort of they saw music as something that's like able to influence the mind or the soul. They
right,
believe in like, the
that's
reincarnation of soul.
exactly yeah, it's like that's exactly what started to happen in the book. Whenever different like students of different disciplines began to take the game, they would correspond the elements of their field of study with the other field of study and like synthesize them into like things that are greater than the sum of the parts.
Yeah.
Like Pythagoras, taking triangles and shit and putting all this, injecting it with so much more than you just see on the surface. But
Mhm.
okay, so I'm just gonna put this away
I
completely
like
because
I
it's
like the
fucking.
stuff that you're doing there with like the isomorphism and the fractal correspondence and stuff. Like I hadn't gotten that far along yet. I think
Well, and
I'm still stuck in like paranoia mode where I'm like, what can this be used for? That's like, you know, that I
and
wouldn't
that's like the thing
necessarily
I'm
like
looking at too.
hope that people would use it for.
You say what? What was that?
Like, I guess I don't know where I come at everything from like a security mindset and where I'm kind of paranoid or anxious. I always wonder like, what could people use this same like technology for? And it's like, obviously, like all this technology is still in use, or like not like still in use, but like it's ongoing and it's like still developing. So
Right, and I mean,
I just end up like wondering like what other people are doing that like I don't know about. And so the unknowns become like more like what are people not telling me rather than like um what do I need to learn to like get where I want to go? Do you know what I mean?
yeah, and I think like when it comes to like Portal Mountain, the fact that it's so explicit yet so obtuse at the same time,
Yeah, yeah.
like it makes this thing where it's telling you exactly what it's doing, but you don't get what it's doing until you until it's done, and then it's. But this is, I mean, what could be accomplished by it in the way that I currently understand. I mean, it's already, because it's like symbols and signifiers and relationships and associations, correspondences, all like being assembled into a fucking plane, and it's not about what is on here, it's about what
Yeah,
this
it's about
builds
the movement
in the
of
moment.
like the information and stuff, not the static objects, I guess. Like we're describing
Yeah.
stuff in
So,
motion.
so yeah, when I see it, I mean, the potential I see in it is the same potential as like, anything anyone else. I mean, it's kind of like some Illuminati shit a little bit,
Mm,
but it's also like,
it's like another way of thinking, really, where you kind of like you don't use nouns as much, and it's like it's more about like what you're doing. Like it's almost like you have to show yourself what you're doing, and the noun is like the creation of the object that shows you what you're doing. It's almost like you're always like making like a mirror so that like you see yourself suddenly.
yeah, I think that would be that's a good metaphor to be what you'd want to achieve is to build a mirror that allows you to see yourself. But
Right.
then, you know, ideally, in my perspective, that would be like putting a mirror up to a mirror, and then, so you're
Yeah.
exposing yourself to like the infinite regression or the infinite recursion of self-reference,
Right.
and that to me is basically the goal of, because that to me, that's like the coming online, like it's like just shooting out infinitely up and down, and then
Like being able to choose amongst like infinite selves like freely, I guess.
yeah, like
Or
like
infinite possibilities, really.
he had talked to like a transient identity, where it just kind of becomes what it needs to be when it needs to be it. So that's
Right.
kind of what I've been trying to do since then, is just like, we can be uh, actors in a scene,
Yeah, or like
or
more fluid or like shapeshifters, something like that.
yeah, or yeah, or
Yeah.
just being the whole scene itself, or just kind of taking your. I feel like there's like things that seem like concrete thresholds of uh, like, okay, this is where I am, this is where I am not, this is where
Yeah, it's
something
almost like
else
you have to
is.
change the language of your brain to be like, you stop telling yourself, oh, I can't do this or I can't be that. And it's like, no, you can. You just have to learn how to do it.
Right, I agree. Hang on, just. Just got that. Well, I mean, that came in last. Hello?
Oh, hey.
Mm. Okay. Um, so I'm thinking something productive that we could do would be, I mean, pristinely, ideally, right? We would want to, we we want to establish like a communication that is achieved by translating our realities to each other,
Right.
right? And then I'm thinking we can achieve that by, I don't know, it's gonna have to be some kind of free form shit right now,
Yeah.
but
Well, what if we just make like a card that it's just like almost like a project where it's just like between the two of us, we agree to translate our realities. Like,
right, we can do that right now.
yeah. So it's like,
Project reality translation, which, you know, maybe basically like getting up to speed. I mean, there's like a they call it like triangulation,
right, yeah.
because like we find like we find the similarities and then kind of like adjust to each other's point of view so we can
Right.
um
So it's almost like it's almost like a handshake protocol, but it's more like a specific. It's like a just specific project.
right,
Yeah.
reality, and then I guess we can put like, I don't know what subtext to put under that, but that'll be, I mean, that's like the overarching.
I guess it's like a translation across different reference frames. Is it's just like another way you could put it, but
Translate to each other's reference frame. Okay, and that's like the initial um, ordeal there. Like synthesize our reference frames, and that would be achieved in order. The goal of that would be to achieve like a more like, I guess, telepathic, I guess you could say, communication. Because I
yeah,
was
yeah.
thinking like, this is like externalized mind almost. and then we sort of build like if we can build possibly just per speculation, if we can build a
It's almost like we're
shared,
making like, yeah, a shared consciousness with each other as like a node.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it may look like, that we can take turns sort of establishing a model of reality, like phenomenologically, like right here, right now, and sort of like bring it to where like this, we agree with what this represents to us, even though it looks like the same thing or something.
Yeah. I'm kind of like a little unclear on that, like what you just said there.
Well, I'm unclear. Well, like if we both have the same cards laid out, and then we both agree, like, oh, that represents my mind.
Okay. So I guess like the
If we
reality
achieve,
translation project, it goes towards trying to make communication like more fluid and more capable, I guess, um
right, and
more
it's
synchronistic.
more, and I mean, you don't need, what sort of reasons would you need that to be the case? I mean, I feel like if your minds, if you like fuse your minds in that sort of scenario, then it's,
I
I
think
mean,
part of it is a matter of like survival, but I think another part of it is that it's also like natural to the way human beings like operate on some level. Like
right.
without realizing it, you're already in communication with like people around you. Even like if you're not talking to them, you're still using body language and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I think that's similar to stuff like even like insects do. Like bees, if they're like sitting back and they're not like moving, they might still be like watching another bee doing its little bee dance, where it's like, I found a flower over here the other day. So like that's
Right.
essentially what we're doing. We're just watching each other like dance and say, I found a clue over here. So
Right. I
you
agree.
can't do that by yourself. We're not like insects that like just live by themselves and like don't have a hive. Like we're social, so our consciousness is also social. Like it,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I mean, we're not explicitly a hive mind, though. I mean, there
No,
is.
no, like you're still like
I
your
think the
own
hive
person.
nature of it is,
Yeah.
it's like, it's it's kind of obfuscated by our subjectivity, which kind of makes us
Yeah,
think.
it's almost like you see it and you get scared, like, oh God, I'm gonna disappear in that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Which I guess you might for a second, but we'll always come back.
Yeah.
So say, yeah, and I feel like that there's communication that goes towards, like you said, like if you're letting someone in, that sort of like, join into that hive. So it's like become a network. But then there's
Yeah.
also communication that's explicitly like, I want to enforce a barrier, you know, and that's more like hostility. So it kind of lines up with the degrees of coherence as well.
Right.
Because like if you and some other person are, if you're hostile towards it, you don't want to integrate their reality into your model. You just want to like enforce differences and like prove them wrong and prove yourself right. And
Right.
so maybe we can throw in, what card is that? I feel like there was a card that had to do with that, the coherent stuff.
I just started writing it down as enforcement protocol. I've just been writing them down as like almost like rules for behavior, even. Like I don't know if like
Enforcement?
yeah, and I just wrote down like enforcing barriers. Let's see.
Right.
Using rhetoric, I guess, like by force to like even like shut down another narrative.
Various attempting to shut down other narratives through rhetoric. Just like the fucking opposite of what is desired
Right.
in actual communication. Or like friendly communication.
Well, I guess it depends because like there's always like certain stuff like hopefully you wouldn't want people to do like you know like you don't want them to murder, so you have enforcement protocol around that.
Okay. All right. So yeah, it's provisional.
Yeah. So it's not like it's always bad. It's more like it's based on what behavior are we talking about and like
Okay.
how
So,
does that person see it in their reference frame? Because some people might see like, oh, you know, murder is fine, and some might say like it's definitely not.
right. Yeah. I guess we can like agree that we can put things under the enforcement protocol to like turn it into a category or something.
Yeah, yeah. But I
Murder
guess
is bad.
yeah, I would put it down as like context is based on behavior and reference frame or something like that.
Okay. So even through all this communication, I'm still somewhat blinded to how to use words on cards to achieve. Well, it's not just words on cards; it's also like dialogue
Yeah.
based around the words on the cards.
The way I look at it, it's almost like we're creating like a, you know, like terms of service. Like when you read like the
Yeah,
terms of service of something that you're about to agree to, um, the legal document that goes into like, okay, what are we going to do? What are we not going to do? What are we liable for? What are we not liable for? And it's just like it's almost like a glossary or an index of like just those pieces of information.
okay. Well, I think okay, terms of service because I mean, if we're attempting to gamify like a sort of almost like a telepathic communication,
Right.
and then the enforcement protocol would dictate okay boundaries. You
Yeah,
know,
boundaries,
that need to
rules.
perceptually be maintained. That's sort of like your terms of like um,
Right, exactly.
yeah, that's sort of like the initial, like, yeah, it's part of the handshake almost. Like you're establishing,
Yeah.
it's a way of establishing trust. Like, okay,
Yeah, it's
we'll
like the
agree.
boundaries and the terms of service, yeah. I mean, it's almost like the same stuff like laws, like when you're born, you come into the world and it's like, well, now that you're here, you have boundaries and you have to agree to the terms of service because you were born on Earth, right?
Right.
I mean, you could
So,
say like murder is fine for me to do and then run around murdering, but somebody eventually is going to disagree and enforce a protocol.
so we get enforcement, terms of service, um, things that sort of can allow
It's
us
almost like the social
to.
contract too, I guess. Like you can't come to this planet and start like doing stuff that we don't like attacking other
Right.
people and stuff like that.
So yeah, like
It's like you don't want to enforce like a narrative on somebody else, but you don't want to like be so negligent that like somebody else is able to use force on other people. So it's like enforcement protocols like to keep things fair. It's not like necessarily to like overwrite somebody's narrative.
Definitely. Should we make that explicit, like hard, or is it just sort of implicit by enforcement
I
protocols?
think it should be understood as like a tool that could be good or bad, like depending on like how it's used
You
or
talking
how it's
about
interpreted.
enforcement protocol or?
Yeah, the enforcement protocol. I mean, as much as like you could say like something is definitely good or something is definitely bad, like somebody might say, you know, I don't like this rule being enforced, and somebody else might say like, you know, obviously we need to have that rule in society. So it's just like it that's
Okay.
comes down to the like a person's reference frame or their point of view.
So maybe we should just like refer back to it as required, like
Yeah,
going along. Because like if there's a point achieved where, because I mean, given enforcement of narrative is one thing, but then there's also a sense of
you don't want to violate certain rules of behavior.
you don't want to violate rules, but at the same time, there's also like this element of like if there's a sharing of
What the rules
reality.
are. Yeah.
Like if there's a sharing, then there may be like a certain element of, because that's where trust is involved. Is like with trust, there's like this element of not surrender, but like compromise.
Right.
Of like, okay, in order for there to be like a deeper level of communication that will facilitate, you
Yeah,
know,
it's almost like you have to suspend your own mental blocks that say like, no, it can't be anything different than from what I believe. It's like you have to
right,
be.
right.
Yeah.
Because if you're rigidly like within this one thing, and then it's either, you know, if none of us are willing to change, then you know it's just reinforcing. It's just enforcement, like to the square one. Because, but at the same time, it's like you sort of bring this around when it's like, well, you're going too far, you know,
Right.
with your
So I guess
maybe not put anything explicitly there, but just kind of understand like enforcement protocol may need to come
so
into play. Is that what you're saying?
yeah, like it's just something that's like a prerequisite, I guess, like before getting involved or to understand.
Okay.
Like you
So
like to go into a group, you have to understand to go into a group that like certain behaviors are not allowed and certain rules will be enforced.
right. Do you want to make anything explicit before like going on to another card?
Uh, no, I want to go to the one that you had about goalpost.
Okay, I've got goalposts here.
Yeah,
So this is like hyperstition, you know, because it's setting up. Shit, where's it at? Okay, so what I wrote down on goalpost is infinitely expanding ideal. The gains endpoint expression facilitate a neural assembly of a scaffold that reaches the goal. So, and that kind of existed to,
oh, 1 second.
no problem.
Um, don't know where they're. Okay, sorry, I'm trying to see what you have on that card there. An infinitely expanding ideal.
Yes, that was like sort of the hyperstation of the process that I would want to come into when playing. Like it's like what you said, like holding yourself up to a mirror and it being like a mirror against a mirror.
Oh, okay, yeah.
You
Frames.
know, so maybe like mirror, mirror.
Facilitate a, what is that, neural assembly of a scaffold that reaches goal.
Yeah, yeah.
Your handwriting's easier to read than Brian's.
Oh, I was writing with that in mind. That okay, I need to try
Yeah,
some of
I
it.
appreciate it. Yeah, I saw some of his cards and I was just like, oh God, I was in despair. There we go. Now, what's that last bit there? Oh, the mirrors.
Oh, I just wrote it says mirror the mirror. It's kind of like a more like
Yeah, it's a good
metaphorical.
like metaphor, I guess, because it immediately puts you in mind of like what it is you're trying to do.
Right. And yeah, I think that's what like we're establishing. Well, these are both kind of what we're trying to do here. Reality translation that is mirroring the mirror, and then
Okay,
we've got like the underpinning protocols that sort of guide how everything unfolds
great.
in the communication.
Can I see the one that you had for fractal correspondence?
Yes, that was one that. Oh shit, where is it? Feedback. Here it is. This is just one that.
Oh, yeah. So
There's
it's
like
almost
this
like the
nice.
isomorphism, isn't it? Very.
Yeah, I mean, if above and below are isomorphic, I suppose they also are
Right, yeah.
fractally corresponding.
Because they might not be. Mm,
Just like another way of saying the same thing.
mm.
But I kind of just wanted to open it up to like, okay, be aware that some categories or references may fractally correspond. So it's kind of like sits off to the side, and then
Yeah,
like, oh shit, there's bam fractal correspondence, and then you can join
it's just
things
like
together.
when I think about like this part, the way my mind works, I automatically go to like physics, and I'm looking at like you know like WIMPs, like the weakly interacting particles and neutrinos, and like the heavy versions of neutrinos, and like it's kind of a weird place to go when I'm trying to like write protocols for like how to socialize though.
Well, I mean, I think a good part of both the game and of fractal correspondence in general is that you're going to be able to find correspondence between physics and socialization because it's exactly how we're like
Yeah, and because like math and
language.
language and like binary language, it's all related in a weird way. Like it all
Yeah,
translates. So it,
and so if, even if you're like, oh, I'm trying to achieve like some sort of social goal,
yeah. And I mean, it's hard
if you
talking
go
about
into
reality.
physics.
Like, so it's like you need to define like every single freaking term, or like you can't.
Yeah, and that kind of that seems to me like it could be considered like a limitation of this uh, media, because when I think of, okay, if you're trying to all of a sudden like make this huge leap between, because it's like left brain, right brain, like
Yeah, like it could be
you're
something that you automatically know how to do, but then like to try and explain it to someone else, it's like that's where the limit is.
yeah, especially when it's like cards on the table. Like, if I had a card for every symbol and correspondence and everything, I mean, you have to take up the whole floor, with all arrows and shit, and
Yeah. And I have
try
that
to do it.
problem too, where it's like I have like sort of like sensations where I don't know how to describe them until like a while later, or experiences that I don't have words for until like maybe hours later, or days later, or years sometimes. So
Man,
it's like, yeah, it's like you're trying to define everything, and it's like, life is still going on, stuff is still happening, and it's like you have to turn around and like leave behind this trail of words. Do you know what I
yeah,
mean?
like artifacts, and it comes
Yeah.
into it being kind of like a puzzle,
Yeah.
and what do you? It's not like a Rubik's cube where it's like all you can do is turn things and use align the square. It's just like
Yeah. Yeah.
how do I, how
And I
can it
mean,
be?
like, I find it frustrating too because, like, like in a lot of ways, like a lot of other people have already figured like a lot of this stuff out and are already like far more advanced in it. But then like I have to realize too, like I can't compare myself to like where other people are. And then there's other people in the world who like, they have no idea about like any kind of cybernetics or like philosophy. They don't even read it. So it's like I guess I'm trying to just make it so that anything I do can be understood by somebody else. Like I'm not trying to like make myself understood to people who are smarter than me. I'm trying to make people who are smarter than me understood to people who are not as interested in what I'm interested in.
Right, like
So
kind of like a bridge.
yeah, yeah,
Well, and maybe that corresponds with the goal of this, because we're trying to bridge
right.
communication, and like I feel like anything that we're trying to express to the other person, I mean, we're kind of in the realm of like the thing that all the other things are talking about, like
Yeah, because like everybody who's talking about anything anywhere in the world right now is like translating something that they know from somebody else to somebody who doesn't know it, like pretty much. That's
yeah, and it's like they're transmitting like certain
yeah,
explicit
yeah, but like
meanings.
unless we like, come up with something new or like something different, they're just going to keep translating the same material over and over and over. And if it's like material that's like, keeps us on the same path that we're on, like as individuals or like economically, obviously that has the potential to be very destructive because we haven't found a way to fix all this stuff yet.
Right. And I
Yeah.
feel like the way, or one of the ways to, it's like if you just translate like memes solely for the sake of translating the memes, then like recycle, or reuse, reduce, or like
Yeah.
vegans, when everyone else is vegan or whatever, they think it's gonna just, it's like some like activity that's gonna change the world. But
Right.
I think with this, we're trying to translate or communicate perspective, like holistic perspective, and not translate our perspective to them, but just communicate with a person in a way that facilitates them gain
Oh,
your own holistic perspective.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, because I don't know. To be honest, like I find like memes are funny, but the actual way that they end up working, like as communication, really bothers me on a deep level because of how lazy some of the communication, and especially like memes are very emotional. Like I don't understand why people who are so into computers and pretending to be so rational and so intellectually superior would go around sharing so many harmful and stupid memes. But I mean, I guess that's just my own point of view that I think it's harmful or I think it's stupid. Maybe like to somebody else, it's like, this serves my purpose, this serves my goal.
Well, and it depends on what kind of memes you're circulating. I mean, if
Yeah.
they're explicitly like, some people just say, oh, World War III.
I can't hear you very well there.
Oh, what about now?
Yeah, that's better.
It's like if people are just like World War III memes or whatever. But
Mhm.
I think a part of this is like you're communicating not just one morsel of information, one like chunk of good. I mean, that's the original meme is like a cultural gene. It's like
Yeah.
it's like one unit
Well,
of
like
cultural information.
that's like one of the things I find it's like it's so powerful about memes, and one of the things that's so scary about them is that they're very raw. Like for just like two lines of like you couldn't do it as a poet. You couldn't write like two lines and just have a picture and be like, that's my poem, and it's a masterpiece. But as a meme, you can, and it spreads like freaking wildfire. So to try and like explain the meme is like trying to keep up with, is trying to put out a wildfire with like I don't know, a little bit of sand or something. Like you just feel like inadequate to the task the way it freaking goes.
Yeah, I mean, if you're trying to just explain each meme individually, then
Yeah, it's almost like you have
you
to
got
start making
it's
your
like you
own
got to
meme.
create,
Yeah,
you
you
have
need
to
to like
create like
copy.
within. But there's also like, and this is where I think it's cybernetics, is that we're trying to communicate not just memes, but the method in which memes are like processed and organized to
Right.
form like worldview. So I think that's like you got the bootstrapping process to where it's not just like, oh, here's a thing. It's like here's the thing of things or something, or the meta thing, where because this is about you're translating how to translate, so
Right.
that's what we're discussing in this game. Is like the goal of it is translation, but what we're getting to with it is how do we translate. So the end thing that will really be, because it wants to like be greater than its own expectation. So it's like if we're just translating, we're achieving a translation of
Yeah, and that's the
how.
thing. Like, you can't do that. Like, you need another universe to process the universe that we're in somehow. Or
Right.
like,
Well, that's what he said. There's like this empty bingo space,
yeah.
like the meta, and then
So
it's
it'd be
like
like
into that
our
space where
universe plus the computer that it's in, or something like that.
potentially
Yeah.
plus the computer. Oh yeah, yeah, you
I
mean
don't know.
like
I
spark
can't think about
simulation
like
theory.
infinity right now. We're all just like go stupid. uh,
So you think we're running on a computer? Okay. Um, how explicit is it? Do you want to make that a card?
Uh,
Are we building shared models now?
um, I think I need you to like prompt somehow because I'm got a little stuck on like
Well, we've got like,
I thought about infinity for like 1 second and now my brain is like empty.
oh, well, that's good.
Yeah.
If something took you to some kind of infinity, then that's a pretty resounding success.
Yeah, but now I don't know what to
I didn't get there, but maybe. So trying to communicate the mechanics of communication. So maybe, I mean, you did mention like the universe and a computer that's running on. So I mean, symbolic or literal, however your model. Maybe we can start like categorizing like.
like you like your model is always going to be like scaffolding. It's never going to be the reality, right? Like you try to make it as accurate as you can, but the reality is like it's
Yeah,
not predictable. Yeah.
yeah, you can't. I mean, yeah, your system like. 'Cause I mean, a model is always like a system of semantics and abstractions that can never envelop the thing that it's trying to describe. So
Yeah, yeah.
you're not like, but you know what it can do is, like you said, scaffold. And so instead of just the words being there, and you're just examining the words, you know you use the words as like a boat to fucking
Right. And
cross
it
the Red
hopefully it
Sea.
can help people get from like a reference frame where like the earth is like 4,000 years old, or maybe like having that belief is like useful to the human race somehow. I don't know. Maybe you don't necessarily want to get rid of it, but like it could make someone who wants to go from like, my parents told me the earth was 4,000 years old to like, I want to be a scientist. And it's like, well, you might need to accept a methodology outside of what you've been taught. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's like how do they determine the age of the Earth scientifically? Like perhaps it's more important, probably more important than knowing the age of the Earth is to know that your knowledge of that is of a provisional importance. So it's like
Right.
if you have someone that's like adamant about the Earth being 4,000 years old and you want to communicate with that person, you would be hindered in your communication if the goal was to like convince the person that you were right and
Right.
that,
So
that
it's only if like they want to open up that belief to discussion that you can like be like, well, maybe if you wanted to do that, I have a skill that you could learn, but I don't want to take away your belief from you if
right. And that's part of the enforcement protocols. Like it's I think a part of the enforcement protocol is like that protocol is kind of you looking at your model and being like, how important in this one conversation, this one communication is my opinion on how old the Earth is.
yeah,
You know,
because I think like one of the things about like I've been reading a bit about like neurodiversity, and a lot of it is about how people's minds just operate like slightly differently from each other, or they process things differently. But then like there's also, I guess, that another kind of neurodiversity where it's just like the people have to be able to believe different things and even speak different languages in order to have ideas that are diverse enough to like even be able to talk about, because otherwise it's just like if we only have all the same idea, then we're gonna get stuck.
Definitely, yeah. There's no, because yeah, it takes in, like, you have to bring in novelty, and then
Right.
allow. I think one thing, like, you're collecting these symbols and stories, narratives, and then people have, like, okay, literal interpretation or metaphorical interpretation,
Right.
and then there's like different layers of meaning that can be applied. Like to some
Yeah, like somebody
people,
might not even understand like where they get a belief from. Like they might have a belief that they think is literal, but or even that they think is like metaphoric, and then like if you look back through history, you find like no, that has some like literary basis or some, or it could,
or like
or
some
like
history of
understanding
Jesus.
it as a metaphor like helps them understand like it's not this literal thing, and like it can open them up to like learning a new skill if they
And
suspend
at the same
some
time,
ideas for others, but they don't have to like, it's not like a thing where you have to like throw away ideas for like other ideas. It's like if you have infinite possibilities, then you can entertain theories without throwing other theories out of the way,
yeah.
So like
And as
I
far
mean
as
that's not something that like religious people like to do though, because I find with like deeply religious people, it's like either you have faith or you don't. And with me, that's like a very, yeah, like that's, I don't, it's hard to know what to say about that, because like I feel like I have multiple theories about reality instead of like holding to one theory. So when somebody's like, "Are you saved? Do you believe in God? Do you have faith? Do you love Jesus?" And I'm like, "Yes and no." Like maybe, like
yeah, you can't say yes and no to a person like that and have them. Well, I
yeah,
mean,
like they'll
it's
get
like
really mad or
it's,
confused, and I'm just like, well, like on one level I believe it this way, on another level I believe it could be this way,
well, I feel like if you can take, it's like taking their communication and knowing that, okay, you have this literal, like, someone saved. Most people don't know what they mean by that. They're like, you know, if you try to question them on it, they're gonna parrot back. It's like it's so far removed from them that their own insistence that they are saved may be what is
Yeah.
blocking their own salvation. You can point to scripture and be like, okay, well, Jesus said, or all these people, like, oh, I proclaimed your name, I performed miraculous works. He said, no, 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 but you didn't know me, and cast them off. So you can use kind of their own. I feel like that's what you want to do. It's like, so when I show you saved, you know, I guess sometimes you want to be, under some circumstances, you may want to be adversarial or seem like you're being adversarial when it comes to defense.
Yeah. Yeah. Because
Or
you don't want to like do this thing either where it's like you humor somebody to the point where it's like,
they don't change or grow.
or they get the impression that you're humoring them, or like you're not trying to like take them seriously because you're only humoring them.
Right. But in a situation where it's like, say, I have this, there's people I've talked to that, they think that Noah, literally like gathered every single animal on the
Yeah.
planet
Yeah.
to each
That that
species, the mode they want to do about, and everything else. So you can like lay that out and be like, okay, you've got this arc, you've got this family, the whole narrative, it's like full of symbols, associations, like context, meaning, and to someone who's viewing it on the surface, on the spectacle surface, it's like a boat is a boat, you know. So it's
yeah.
like God is a dude in the sky that talks to you, like, and so it all becomes just this literal, like, one meaning thing. But to be
Yeah.
like, yeah, I think that that's true, and I think that that happens, and
Yeah,
then
like you can.
you put it upon yourself to translate that into a way that, yeah, it is true, because if it, if God is like inside of every one of us, and then, or say, if you can correlate it with the mind, turn it into a, fractally correspond the entire narrative with, like, um, something happening in the same way that stuff happens. Like, if I'm like a materialist and I have like a more of a, okay, these stories are reflecting neurological occurrences that lead to, certain beneficial or like spiritual states of mind. So
Yeah.
it's like a cleansing of the earth could be something to you, and then I've never explicitly done it myself, like translated it, but it's like that's what this
Yeah.
game would be about, like, so that you can say, yeah, that's happened, yeah, I'm communicating with you, and then, but you'd be like on fractally
I feel like
corresponding
it's
way.
like it's strange to me because for me, like I have kind of like an animist spirituality, so I tend to look at things as like basically as scaffolding. Like your cells build up to your body builds up to your thoughts, and your thoughts build up to like a social organism that operates as a consciousness above your own. Um, so when I think about God or the infinite, I tend to think of like the entire universe would be part of God's brain if he was like, to be like a thinking sort of um, machine, which I guess reality sort of is because, we're here thinking, and like everything in the universe, even like the starlight, it's all reaching us, and we're all thinking about it. So it's like it forms
Yeah,
part of our consciousness.
yeah,
But
I mean, even like,
it's like it's almost like a single neuron in a brain trying to understand like the rest of the body. Like it can communicate to a couple other neurons, but it can't understand the entire machine that it's a part of.
that's true, that is true, but I think, like, in that metaphor, like, what a neuron can do is like what we're doing here. Like, it can communicate outwards, because if a neuron's connecting with another neuron, then that's forming like
Yeah,
one
like I feel like our
structure.
neurons in our brains are literally doing like right now, like the exact thing we're doing, but in chemical form. Like they're sending the chemical versions of like the words fractal correspondence to each other. And it's like that's really hard to understand.
And then that is a fractal correspondence, because
Yeah.
if we're too, like, we're trying to like cross synapses with each other, and so the electrical information in my body, which be like the neuron, is literally like attempting to transfer over through, a synapse communication, which would be like the game, and then that continues on, and then you have, like, it makes this huge, like, if nothing is doing it, it's making like this huge idea or thought structure, in the brain that involves all these different. So it's like the neuron is both sitting there by itself, but it's also in
Yeah. Yeah.
like a communication that turns into its own object.
Yeah, because that's the funny thing about like, we treasure our individuality so much, but like we literally could not survive as individuals alone by ourselves. Like we would lose our minds like within a couple
Well,
days.
not to speak of even outside of like human to human contact, we
Yeah,
need to consume other living beings to survive.
yeah, yeah.
So it's like that's a form of communication as well.
Hmm.
And then, shelter. And I mean, yeah, it's like a human body can't exist in a void, but um, that doesn't, if we were something that wasn't a human, like to the Hindus, like Brahma, he just kind of like the anthropomorphized Brahma, not like the the Brahma that's like the essence or whatever. He
He's
like
like the
kind of
material creation.
yeah. Well, I mean, you have like subsects that turn Brahma into like a god with a body, and like he doesn't. He's like the demiurge. He just sits there, and like his thoughts are what we experience as reality. And then you've got the Brahma that's just like this undifferentiated essence that like turns into all experience or whatever. So,
Yeah.
but in either case, like it's existing um, in a state where it knows that it's not relating to anything except for itself, and yeah, it's kind of like a different state of being than
Yeah, it's kind of weird
assuming.
too when I think about it as like if you think of like each of us has like if you believe in God and you're gonna take this attitude, okay, we all contain like a piece of God, then like why is God like fighting with himself so much?
Well, it's like why are it's like yeah, it's like why are we struggling to understand ourselves so much? Like it's the
Yeah.
same
Like you
back
think
and
if we
forth
all had this
lines.
like spark of divine, we'd walk around and it would be like, oh, hello, neuron number three, and instead of like a million different like ideologies and identities and that exist like in conflict or like to antagonize each other somewhat. It's like
Right.
it
Well, think about think. Go back to the neuron. Like if a neuron fires off, then its dendrites are always in proximity to other dendrites of other neurons. But there are like processes in place that cause if a neuron has like 7 dendrites, only like 3 of them will synapse with other neurons, and
yeah,
that's like something. But the flare, the electrical impulse, it goes through all 7, but it only creates a synapse to 3. Like there's some sort of uh, it's like neuroplasticity. Like there's processes in place that keep it from communicating with this neuron over here.
yeah. It's
But
almost like
then,
even inside like your own thoughts, there's like a hierarchy of thoughts, and some thoughts will overwrite other ones, or like even some memories.
well, for sure. I mean, like we have this whole like dreams are less real than reality thing going on, and then we have like this whole I think like the thoughts that we have that um like literally our whole perception is thought in my perspective. Like if we're looking at anything or experiencing anything, it's a representation built and constructed by our brain. And so it's technically a thought, but it asserts itself as a reality by the thing that is creating it. Like the brain makes it and then tacks on like, okay, this is real, and so it's like an arbitrary like signifier of because it's the only thing that you have except for a relation to other like thoughts that occur, quote unquote, in our heads or dreams. Those are the only things you have to relate to it. So,
Right.
if something else were to come along that were, more real or whatever, then it would
Right.
recontextualize this experience of reality as more thought-like. I feel. Some people disagree with that, but
No,
are you like writing cards out of this or?
yeah, I was just writing down about like some stuff about like the idea about like a hierarchy of thoughts, about like thoughts
What
that
over?
override others.
I'll copy it down if you want to
Okay.
dictate it.
I don't know if I can show it on the screen here. No, it doesn't really like
No, that's
look that good from here.
it's 2:06.
Maybe I'll just read it out. Okay, so I just wrote like a hierarchy of thoughts, memories overriding other memories, perceptions changing.
So sorry about that. I was asking questions.
Huh?
So I literally like didn't catch hardly any of that. Hierarchy of thoughts. I like this. The hierarchy of thoughts, and what else?
So there's like memories that overwrite like other memories over time.
Memories over, right? Other memories.
There's perceptions that change over time.
And then you have the memory of those other perceptions, and the only reason that they're not your perception currently is because they're considered memories and not. Damn. Okay.
Yeah, they're not their current model.
Yeah. Did you have anything else?
Yeah. If they assert themselves as reality, or the dominant thought in the hierarchy.
Okay. So dominant thought. See, I think this is what a lot of is spoke about when like on Blue Mountain talk about like fiat. Like genuinely use that word a lot, fiat, and also in like 33 Myths of the System, they speak of fiat.
Yeah.
It's like it's the experience that asserts itself as the dominant,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's almost like the cultural ego kind of asserts like.
Yeah, so like a lot of things could be included under that banner, like all kinds of like older ideas and stuff, that get like left behind for something newer.
Right. So we got this hierarchy of thoughts. I like that.
And I also put down what you said, an arbitrary signifier in relation to other thoughts that occur that waits for data that is more real.
Relation to other thoughts waiting more real data. Okay. So that's good because that hierarchy is like something that it exists both as like a structure that categorizes the continuum of our experience into something we see as like segmented. I think it has to do with how we have this dichotomy of like our body and mind and our
Yeah,
thoughts and our reality.
Yeah, because I mean, like, some people are going to experience things that is real to them that, isn't real to the next person. That it's going to entirely change their point of view.
Yeah, definitely. And it's like, yeah, it's like it's kind of static, but at the same time, you know, through feedback, it can be basically like, because I think a big goal here, a part of reality translation is allowing this hierarchy of thought to be like fluid, you know.
Yeah, and I
And
guess like
then
that would almost go back to like enforcement too, where it's like you kind of try to create a culture where it's not like you have to obey like a hierarchy where it's like you can only think this way, but you kind of open it up to like motion instead of static belief systems.
right,
Yeah. It's kind of weird though, because it's like, people don't like to think of like diversity being enforced. Like you can't like force like people to be different or to identify a certain way or be like, you're too much like the next person, so you're not diverse enough.
well,
Like,
people surely try.
yeah,
I think that's an ideology that's coming into view lately. You know, like
yeah.
I'm trying to enforce diversity. I was in a chat room and this guy, he was like, um, this chat room needs more uh, black people, and
Yeah, like
we
it's
got
like just the feature of like being like from a particular like color or from a different country or from a different language is going to like make a person's thoughts more diverse than like another's. I'm not sure like that's the case because it's like between like two people who are from the same town they might not agree, and then you get like someone who might like be from like a certain country or a certain part of a country, and you'll say like, oh, this person's going to stand out and be really diverse, and like they might not. They might just be like the blandest, like most basic person, like
yeah, it's like they're
it's almost like it kind of like it removes like the individual basis when it's like we have to be diverse by enforcing diversity. But I mean, you don't want to have it so that like people are being left out either. So I kind of see
right.
why
I
it's
mean, we
done.
openness to diversity, but and also about like you're also defining the metrics of diversity that have to be, it's like you're not like, oh, let's bring in someone with a different point of view. You're like, let's bring in someone with a different
Yeah,
culture,
let's bring in someone who's like Chinese or something, and then it's like,
or
well,
let's bring
that
in
doesn't
someone
that
like
doesn't feel like you're enforcing like diversity so much as you're, it almost feels like a bit racist
you're
by
enforcing
itself somehow.
segregation.
Yeah.
You're enforcing like a recognition of segregation because it's like you have to like purposefully identify someone as different so
Yeah,
that you
like
can bring them in, and then oh now we have diversity. We've achieved diversity. So it's like I don't know.
it
I'm
is
trying to
rough
put
though
this
because
stuff.
I mean
It's
like there is some argument for it, like, but like it's not I don't think it's like a very strong or compelling argument. Like at the end of the day it's almost like you sort of do it so that like people have a chance to get into certain industries, but you don't do it with the expectation that like they're different because of this one aspect of their identity that we hired them for. Like you don't hire
right,
someone to
exactly. That's what it
you don't
turned
hire
into. Like
someone to
it
be
started
black.
off as like it started off as like this is to discourage like exclusion, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
But then it turned into this is to you know.
This is the hired woman on the team, like
Yeah, exactly. To where it's like it started off as like, oh, you're not allowed to, or to discourage like, oh, we're only gonna hire men, you know. But then it turned into, oh, now we have to hire a woman
yeah,
to, you know what I'm saying? I don't know. That's touchy and it's political. I'm not even.
yeah, like that kind of stuff. Like I don't even really want to go there at the moment because it's just
Yeah, for sure.
a volatile area.
Um, but the hierarchy of thought is definitely, and where does that lead to? You know,
Yeah,
just
like
are we trying to? I feel like it's a good start. It's a good place to like build from because
well, like I guess like that's my thing that like it's a constant like worry for me that I my paranoia about the human race, I guess, makes me wonder like, is it going to lead to like a sort of like sharing of information and a consciousness, or is it going to lead to like one person having a cult of personality over like most of the earth?
yeah, that
Like,
is a. I mean, my sort of idea. I mean, for fractally, it's not like ideally, it's not like, and that's the thing with fiat. You know, like, does fiat have to exist somewhere? It's like it's like, is there going to be an ego somewhere? Because then it's like everything. It's like merging itself. It's merging shit into itself, and then just dominating as opposed to. Um, it's a very touchy subject. Yeah, we're talking about
yeah, because you want people to like take responsibility for themselves and to not feel helpless and stuff. But then like they could take that and be like, well, if I'm not helpless, I'm gonna go do like something horrible then. And it's like, no, 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 no. Like so it's you don't want to give people information that like they're gonna take and like use to violate like the terms of services that you set out. But like they definitely will do that with the same information.
see, and it's cool because like, okay, we went to what you said, right? We we're discussing this, but we're referencing terms that we've already made. So I feel like that it really kind of brings to light like good play, you know, because like you're talking about terms of service, like in a context outside of what we've already established here, that wouldn't mean, you know, so anything beyond like what I think of when I think of terms of service. But we're like we're building a.
I can't hear you there. I think your sound is muted.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I got a phone call.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, it's like it's building onto each other a little bit, just by being able to, just by building it up, like putting terms and shit, and then conversing, and then using the terms to like solidify what you mean further down the line. It's going good.
Yeah.
But as far as like, so it's kind of like if you're, this is just speculation. If you're making a model like co-mutually and sort of like um, both defining it for yourself, like finding it for yourself, and then translating it with someone else, and then kind of like allowing it, like
Like
to
everyone
sort
has
of
their
like,
own version.
well, it's like kind of everyone has their own version, but what I'm getting to is like, it's like the model itself becomes like the fiat, you know? So it's not like because it's the model. The model is the thing that is being dynamically changed depending on the input of every person.
Right.
That,
So the model itself could become a myth, maybe.
well, the model is definitely a type of mythology, but at the same time, like it becomes its own. It becomes like it's like a reference point, because like in like a false individuality, it's like the reference point is our sense of self, and everything revolves around there, you know. But in the sense of like, if
Right.
you're if you're having a communication that preserves uh, your personal individuality without like succeeding it to like someone else who's like dominating it, then it's like the model, because that's not a person, but it's created by people. And then if you're communicating according to the terms of service with a shared goalpost of like reality translation, then ideally it would be like a dynamic, ever evolving thing that's everyone would be in agreement on, and you kind of make your actions in relation to what that model is. That's kind of what we do, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I think I see what you mean. Like whatever's happening with the model, like you're gonna do it on your own level in a different way or in your own version.
yeah, it's like it's kind of like I mean, just to use Christians as sort of like a basis because it's what I have the most experience with. They say things like enslave every thought to Christ, you know?
Yeah,
And so it's like, and then they'll be like, okay, a church is like the body, and then the head of the church is Christ, you know? So then you go, okay, what is Christ? They'd be like, oh, he's some dude that did this thing. That's what people, and it's like putting yourself in enslavement to some dude who,
yeah. Like I always really struggled with like trying to understand like the myth of Jesus, to be honest. Like,
right, and we kind of have, oh, he's God. He's God. And he's also, he says, I am the way. So if you put him as like isomorphic with a model that is being agreed upon by two communicating parties, then it's like that model would be Christ, essentially.
yeah,
It would like have a factual correspondence with what the Christians consider. But you literalize Christians like, oh, he's a guy that did this thing and then died and like went to heaven or whatever. And then you believe in him and serve him or whatever. It's very like um, what's it called? Like uh, when it's all about like the dude. Well, what do they call it? The patriot. It's very patriarchal and
yeah.
like because it's like it's a
Or
dude,
like even like
and
a iconic, I guess. Like
yeah, it's like it turns into it's more about who is. And everyone's like, let's find out who he is.
yeah, rather
But
than like who are you instead of like you're trying to be like Jesus, and it's like that might be a good thing, but like you could also be like a lot of people who've done like a lot of good stuff in like the last 2000 years.
right, I mean, Yeah,
But I
and
mean,
so
like, I guess like a Christian would say, like, you know, like all those people had like Jesus inside them and stuff. But then I'm just like, the way I think, I'm like, well, what about everybody before Jesus was born? I guess they just weren't good people, or like they just didn't have a prayer. Like, what happened then?
right, but if you fractally correspond like that whole idea of Jesus to just like model in general, not any specific model, but a model that would emerge from like the level of communication that you're trying to achieve. So it's like it's what you believe, and it's what this person believes, what I believe, but like agreed upon and translated to each other to where we both sort of
Right.
enter into like a shared reality that allows for, and then it's like neither one of us is dominating the other, but like it's the
Yeah.
model that it's
Yeah,
like
but I mean, like, first it has to happen that I have to understand like what Jesus means to you, or even what he means to like the next guy, because like that no one agrees, I guess. But yeah, I guess I find that hard to stomach too. Like how it's like if it's like so easy to believe in Jesus and be like Jesus, why are there so many Christian denominations and like
well, and
they
I
can't
don't
they
want to
can't
keep it like
agree about their own religion. So it seems like, well, if there's why are they so splintered off? But I mean, like I guess that's every religion, it just like splinters somehow. Like there's all kinds of different versions of like
yeah, and you don't have to get um and we don't even have to include like the word Jesus or anything. I was just
yeah.
like, if you look at the relationship shared between the word Jesus and the word model, but you can do it with Buddhism too. Like, um, they have the same sort of things going on with like this or that person uh, can become a Buddha, and then we have like the Pure Land, and it's essentially, here's the here's like a pinpoint that you like try to understand. Like a group of people try to understand this pinpoint or this thing. For us, it's like the game. Like we're trying to understand the game,
Right.
and then uh, and then, but whatever the game says is dependent on how we're perceiving it. So that's why you got all these denominations of everything, because no one is agreeing on what anything is saying. But then if two people come together and they're like, okay, we agree it says this, then
Then
I
they
was
can.
focusing more on like, uh,
Yeah, so you could sort of like you make ideas into reality by like believing and acting on them, I guess.
well, I was speaking more in context of what you had said, that, you don't want, like we're trying to achieve like communication and empathy, and we're trying to like translate each other's realities, which um, if someone does that and then it turns into like them defining and then like pushing that reality onto you to like accept as truth, then they're a cult guy. It's like, oh, I'm a cult leader.
Yeah.
And then they're like, I am Jesus.
Yeah.
And then you just gotta do what I say. But um, if that can be achieved without, it's like I'm trying to find a solution to it.
It's
It's like
almost
no
like
one person.
without that threat of like we're gonna we're gonna push you away and leave you out in the cold unless you believe like what we say or something. It's like, no, you can believe what you need to, and like whatever works for you. Like we want that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and that's and yeah, and in so much as you want to like inject your belief, your individuality into this, nexus of communication, because like if you're putting your perspective in, that's the communication we're doing. But if you're like, if you're keeping it all um, just inside, and there is no like externalization, and there is no sharing, and there is no like profound communication. But like if it happens the right way, then the model is just as much yours as it is mine. It's like it's nobody's and it's everybody's. And then if it gets achieved at that level of success where we can co-mutually create and agree upon this model as like a sufficient map to communicate, then it's not you, it's not me, it's both of us and neither of us. And then if you deduce it that way, then if it's neither of us and it's both of us, then it's like it's just the thing. So like the thing, it's like the pattern created by the neurons is of a higher order of in the hierarchy of thoughts is higher than the neuron itself.
Yeah.
Like when they're all like lighting up in each other, creating like a thought.
Right. Yeah, I think that's like, it's like that definitely leads into like why the world's gotten to be like so, I guess like not so trusting is because of you know, the effects of overwriting so many like narratives over time that it's like now people are like they're protective of their own narrative and they probably don't want to share it as much.
Yeah, and I mean that's fair. I mean, you want to. I mean, that's kind of like a tribalization, where you have your kind of inclusive narrative history, and
And
your
I mean, like, I
mythology.
guess like there are going to be groups too that are like
Hang on just a sec. Hang on just a sec. I'm sorry. Sure thing. You don't have anything to pick up, so I get mine closed. But Jerry, I think he did. I think no, he picked them up yet. That is that over there. Oh, Jerry Brooks, yeah. Holy moly. Sorry about that. 25.96. She actually did. It's just me. Do you have her phone number? I mean, she quit on what was this? I don't even have a date on that. Yeah, it was 20 years. It was probably like the 27th. No, I mean, I'm just, yeah. I'll just, if you know, you want to get in touch with her, that's going to be how it has to go. She's not going to be here anymore. I thought she was too, and then she came back and like took all of her stuff out, and you know, it's like told the owner that she wasn't that she had quit, and it all became like really official. And that was like a week ago. That was on New Year's. Appreciate you. Sorry about that. Oh, I see a cat. Is that? Oh,
It's a talking cat.
nice. I apologize for that occurring while you were in the middle of formulating a sentence. So were you able to write it down into a card or keep it into your mind somehow?
I wrote down a card about tribal protocol.
Tribal. Okay.
Yeah.
Should it be, what color do we have here? Any green?
And I just wrote down that it's like unwillingness to participate in shared model or narrative.
Unwillingness to participate in shared narrative.
Yeah, and
Okay.
beneath that I wrote like special interest or secret society or disinterested individual.
Interest. Secret societies. We're only interested in what?
Disinterested individual, like just someone who's like just not interested in
Disinterested
being a participant.
individual. Well, it's like, yeah, I think that if we can apply fractal correspondence to tribal protocol, it's kind of like the guild. You know, how like the guild can be either a group of people or just like one person.
Yeah, yeah.
Like you can be a one-man guild in the system because it's just a word. It signifies like movement that is in coherence with the model. You know,
Yeah.
that is moving like towards the archetype. So it's like, yeah. So it's like kind of the same thing with the tribal, but it's like where the guild kind of proliferates along the fractal, like through the guild dynamics. It's like it's designed to be coherent among the shared layer. The tribal, the tribe is just kind of self-contained. So it's like you can have a one-man tribe, like you said, a disinterested individual can be like a one-man tribe because like it's all, yeah, he's keeping it to himself. Um, so I think having a model as a card, I use a pink card. I haven't used one of those yet. Because we had discussed that, and it's kind of like on the table in a conversation as an object and like a dynamic process, but maybe it being in the game board will the model can be contained in an individual exist fractally along a network of nodes. Um, do you jive with that statement?
Yeah, I guess I think of it as like like the pixel in like a picture that contains like the entire image. Does that make sense?
Like, what's that? What's that called? Like a hologram? Like,
Yeah. Like when you zoom in on the pixel, like you'll find that like it contains like the rest of the information about the picture. It's like
okay,
almost
yeah,
like when you zoom in on like a human being or whatever, you'll eventually get to like their DNA that contains the rest of the information about the human being.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it could just be that is definitely one way to, yeah. And it's also just like a person's perspective, just their general, like their kind of um, static perspective on like what reality is. You know, if they
Right.
have that sort of,
So like you might say like, why do you believe like some crazy irrational thing or something like that? Like obviously it doesn't fit with like the model of reality that everybody else has, but then like, for their field of interest or their field of study, like it could be an invaluable tool or something. So if you take that away, it's like suddenly you removed a function and you've removed like even like a possible solution or
definitely.
like part of their body of work. So it's like now they can't like they can't do something in like mathematical maybe because you decided out of because you didn't understand it that like like irrational numbers that doesn't make sense, get rid of that, or you know it, it could make sense to them somehow in a way that's like important to their work.
Okay, so is this in the sense of um, is this in the context of like sharing models and like data loss
I guess
amongst
like
that sort of?
yeah, like models is one word, but I'm thinking also like more like tools, like smaller aspects. Like you might think like this one thing this person believes out of like everything else might make sense, but this one thing is crazy. But then like maybe that crazy thing has some application. So it's like you don't want to say like that doesn't fit with the model of reality if it's like you don't know that like
Right. You want to attempt to translate that, correct? Like,
yeah.
so I mean, at the very least, I'll put DNA of an organism because I think that that's sort of ambiguous enough to, that'll have multiple layers of meaning.
Yeah, because I mean, like you could look at
'Cause,
something like, say, like junk DNA, and say like, oh, you don't need junk DNA in your body, and then like you go to remove it, and then find out like, no, that actually did something really important.
yeah, I feel like the whole term of junk DNA is like a miscomprehension of like DNA in general.
Yeah,
Like, they kind of just called shit they didn't understand junk DNA.
yeah, because I mean, it was all useful at one point, or like maybe not necessarily useful to us, but it did something.
You change a little bit of junk DNA, and then, when they're 5 years old, now they have, like, kidney disease or something. Like, it was some, like necessary block of the fucking process that,
Right,
it's kind of like
right.
the butterfly effect, but instead of time, it's like information.
Yeah, and then it's like too, it's like you could say like, oh, could we make a human being with minimalistic DNA and cut out all the extra bits that like we don't need, and then like, you know, that might not work so well. But then like at the same time, it's like that stuff that's like considered junk DNA, like it can also potentially be activated, like, or you know, mutate and become something else. So it's like if you remove it, or you try and say like, you know, you can't have this belief, or you can't be this certain kind of person, or you can't have this certain gene, then like later on down the line you might find like, well, you know, that gene would be really helpful right about now, like, you know, when, especially like when we're doing stuff like making hundreds of species of like bacteria, insects, trees, plants, and stuff like that go extinct, when it's like that could have been like a vital medicine that could have, you know, it could have had an enzyme that cures a serious disease. It could have been, you know, there could be some kind of specific virus that only infects a certain type of insect that you could have repurposed for like some medical use. And it's like if it goes extinct, then you don't have any of that. Like
Yeah,
you're
totally.
working on like this idea that like, oh, you know, I have to kill all this bacteria. I have to um, harvest all these forests. I have to cut everything down, and then like you're going to be left with like fewer tools in the end. Like diversity has a use. It's like meant to be something that we can draw upon, um, to balance equilibrium, and it's like we're undoing it. You know, like nature started out with like all these millions of species that could have been like they could have all been useful if we like just figured out like how to apply them, or how to apply like their capabilities or their function. And it's like, you know, for the sake of like a bit of profit today, we're destroying all kinds of potential in the future.
No, yeah, no, I think that this kind of corresponds to what I've heard Brian call like the angle of ingress, because like it's like every potential like diversity of relation is potentially, like you said, it's like a place that can serve as, you know, a junction for any number of different.
Right.
It's like, yeah, it's like if capitalism is cutting down everything that seems superfluous and proliferating everything that is beneficial to it, you know, it's like that superfluous stuff is what digests like the excrement of the process that capitalism undertakes. So it's like, you know, if you have a bunch of humans that, you know, exhale carbon dioxide and breathe oxygen, they're cutting down trees that, you know, exhale oxygen and breathe carbon dioxide, then it's like you're,
Yeah, it's
you're
like
like questing for immortality, but you're ensuring your own demise.
yeah, that's actually like I think it was I'm not sure if it was black elk or like another Native American. It was like a saying. It was like human beings have the DNA of a tree. So, like, if you're cutting down the trees, you think like, you know, the tree isn't myself. It's fine for me to cut down as many trees as I want. But your DNA does contain the DNA of the tree because you evolved to need uh, you evolved in tandem with that process of like the way oxygen is created, the way like fruit is produced by trees, like the insects that live in the trees. Like you don't realize like how like deeply involved you are with like the tree that you're cutting down until like, you know, like you've run out of air, it seems like. And like you can cut down a lot of trees
Right.
before you run out of air, but it's like you don't realize that you're doing it. You don't realize that you're running out of oxygen.
So it's kind of like if so, if I like this because you have the model, you have just a model in general being associated with the DNA of an organism,
Right.
and then you have like the hierarchy of thought that is somewhat enforcing this sense of differentiation between you and the tree, which, they share this DNA, but at the same time, the small individual differences like enforce their separation and then give us like the illusion of separation that causes one to cut down the other.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
if you were to a communication with the tree would be like a realization of your shared DNA, and then something that had that sort of relationship wouldn't destroy each other.
yeah. Like a
They would like
conscientious
grow to
relationship.
them.
Like you understand that you need
Yeah,
the tree more than like you need like all the paper in the world.
piece of paper. Yeah,
Yeah,
and like you can still get a little paper from a tree without cutting it down. So
yeah. Or you could use hemp,
yeah, which I mean it's its own kind of plant, but I mean it's also kind of a tree. I had to
Yeah,
put some laundry in, so
that's cool.
um, so that's cool because like yeah, because that's
It's
what we're
almost like
trying to
you
do.
have
We're
to
trying to like
understand that you have to understand that relations to each other are important and need to be maintained respectfully in order to advance.
and it's like that realization and that communication is isomorphic with sharing DNA or realizing that DNA was already shared.
Yeah, yeah,
And that kind of comes with the idea that, like, if you're coming to a realization of your similarity with the DNA of the tree, and if you correspond DNA in general with like um, a model of reality that sort of defines how we act and it kind of contextualizes why we do what we do and how we perceive ourselves in relation to other people and ourselves in relation to the environment and things like that. So it's like now you have this you basically just made another metaphor for the exact kind of communication that we're trying to achieve with this game.
yeah. But
And so it's like you have the human, you have the tree, and then you have the DNA.
right.
So it's like, what in that scenario is like the highest on the hierarchy of thought?
Yeah, and I like the idea, the metaphor too between like shared DNA and the shared model because like our DNA is very much like shared with like all kinds of creatures. Like even like, when we're in the womb, we develop gills, like when we're still in the womb, and then we lose those. We still have like the reptilian like sort of like third eye, you so like, you know, on Earth, like we're related to like even like the fungus and the algae. Like you can't like live without any of it. Like algae produces a large amount of like oxygen in like the ocean, and we started out like, for billions of years we were algae. Like,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, just pond scum.
yeah,
Kind of have that too. Like the genetics are they correspond with like mythology, like when you had y'all were talking the other day about like oral mythology
Yeah,
and how so in that way it's like it's this very fresh like you're gifted it and then you have memory and then you like you give it back to and so it's like it stays fresh and mutating because it probably like preserved in its essence but maybe like one or two words are changed
right.
with every or people put their own spin and flavor on it so it's like very just always fresh always adaptive um
Yeah.
always like in the prime in
Yeah,
the
so it's
context that
almost
it's
like
in
a
but like
yeah,
if
it's
you
like a model that's not like written down, but it's actually surprising. I find like when I study like oral history, just so far as I have, like I'm not like any kind of expert, but I find like with oral histories, it seems like it's much more important that you don't have like as much of a personal interpretation as you do with like written history. Because like with written work, it seems like people interpret it like immediately. It's like, oh, I'm going to interpret it this way, and then the next person's going to interpret it that way. But with oral history, it's like it has to be transmitted as close to the original as possible. And so if you destroy like the oral history, it's not. It's like it's almost like it's more devastating than if you destroyed like one person's like written interpretation. Like you took apart somebody's thesis. No, like you took apart an entire town's like history going back for God knows how long. You know, if you destroy even just so much like one folktale.
yeah no doubt I mean and to destroy a folktale is like it's like you said like destroying diversity
Yeah,
and it's the same thing like the biological diversity it corresponds directly with um this mythological and narrative diversity that sort of and I feel like they have like the same uh functions as each other and the same
yeah. So
benefits to preserving
it's
each
almost like
other.
we have to look at like stories and even like languages and like ways of thought as like endangered species. Like you want to preserve it. Like you don't want to end up like thinking like the same thoughts over and over and over because like everybody had to have like the exact same interpretation of reality.
Right, and that's exactly what people tried to do. They were like, um, we'll get rid of all other, reality, all other genetics, all other. So it's like you can correspond like what capital does with biodiversity is the same as like what the Catholic Church does with paganism or whatever, or
Yeah,
like or colonialism did to Native American mythology or whatever. Same thing, and it's like okay, this will disappear, and then we will assert you know the ideology or the exact
yeah,
like the ideology is like corresponds with an industrial landscape like we're gonna
yeah.
build
Like, and it's always like
means of
promised to be better,
production.
right? Like it's
Yeah,
always
that's the
like
whole
promised.
thing. Like there's the myth of progress and then like the kingdom of heaven. Like you just believe this thing, you'll go to heaven, or if you just work in this way, you'll retire rich or whatever. And
It's almost like a
and so
kind
it's
of
like
corruption. Like
it's a complete it's what?
it's almost like a kind of
So it's like a
corruption
type
that
of what?
goes through society. That's like believe this one thing and like will make you wealthy at the expense of other people and at the expense of like other species
What?
and even at the expense of like your own future probably, but it can't stop itself.
Right. It's like a viral agent that just it spreads and like and it lays down everything that it spreads and does
I
is
don't I don't mean
to
to put that on like
see.
capitalism though, as like, like, oh, anybody who makes a profit is like bad. Like obviously we're all capitalists. Like everybody wants to get something out of society. It's just like on the level of like, do you just take and take and take and never put anything back? Like it seems like capitalism is, or like at least not capitalism itself, but like it's not enforced to be um
Sustainable.
yeah, sustainable. It's just like all very much like what can a few people get right now versus like what can a lot of people do for each other that's going to be a lot more productive than, how can I sabotage the next guy?
Yeah, I mean it's very uh yeah, I'm not trying to, I mean I guess I kind of am, because it's not like you have these small efforts at like sustainable capitalism, but they're not really anything that's, and I
It's
mean,
almost like it's like
and
propped
people,
up to just like to sell you on it again. Like,
yeah, exactly, yeah, like use our company because we recycle the most or whatever,
yeah,
and then it just kind of becomes another talk. But that's not to, I was just like, it's just an arbitrary example, because even through the meta level of communication that you're attempting to you know bring about with this game is like, it's the sharing of the DNA, and it's like the realization of connectedness. So
yeah. And I mean, like, I guess like you
um
always have to understand that like even with sharing, it's like it's never going to work out 100% like the way you wanted it. It's like it's always a compromise. So, what am I trying to say?
right, I mean, there's definitely, yeah, because if it worked out exactly how one person wanted it, then it's not a shared
Right.
thing. It's like it's a domination.
And
So
so like I feel like
you
people look
want,
at it too like as like they might look at it as like, oh, that one person or like that one handful of people is controlling everything, and it's like nobody controls everything. Like e- even people with like a lot of money in the world, they still have to worry about like being assassinated or like just dying of cancer. Like, you have to stop thinking of like anyone as all powerful and just think about like what powers do you have?
so yes, I agree. And then I'll also, yeah, it's not like a self, you don't want it to be a selfish endeavor, and you want to, in so much as you have like sort of the ideal dynamic model would be like perfectly democratic in a sense,
Right, but that's not
because
really going to happen.
every agent, well,
I mean, like
it
maybe
depends on,
that's just. I guess that's just my own reference frame talking. Like, I still don't have like the kind of faith in like people. Sometimes I wish I did.
well, and it's kind of like it's like, once again, if you try to equate it with the DNA, like that DNA, like it's not just abstract. It's like it's a bunch of little nucleic acid molecules and rhizomes and enzymes and shit that are like,
It's almost like a way more
um,
complicated alphabet than like we could come up with.
yeah, I mean, it's an alphabet that, well, it's an alphabet that's already encoded into like how to proliferate itself. So like that's a necessary part of the DNA, is how to like write more DNA, and then because that's like a part of the coding, and that's what
Right.
they're talking about. Like I think the
But that's
bootstrapping.
like that like tripped me out that you said that then because it's like you're literally like your DNA is like talking through you, telling you to say that. Like,
Right, and that's why, like you said, like everything's a scaffolding, everything's like a hollow like structure that it references itself at higher layers to like achieve a platform to go to a higher layer. Like the DNA had to self-reference itself to build the thing that can sit here and then be informed by it to reference itself again in the same way that you just saw.
yeah.
And then like you have to have like a network of that occurring. That's where this communication leads to, is the network that's like connected becomes the platform for like something else to emerge.
Right.
And it's like from the DNA to the organism is like that process. We're all going by the same mechanics. Like the mechanic that caused that to happen is determining the mechanic in which it will happen further up in the
Right.
layers. So yeah, it's very
Yeah, and it's like trippy as hell too to think about like how like DNA is like thinking about itself and then transmitting itself, through sound to other people to rewrite their DNA. Like that just
and like a rewriting of the DNA is important because like we form gills in the womb, but they close back up. Like that was like it mutated itself right there. So it's like it's dynamically altered throughout a person's experiences because like it's writing its own like I feel like we're affecting our own DNA
yeah,
down the line. And
yeah.
then like your ancestors or whatever are all it's in all of that. And so you're putting it in and like uh every experience of everyone ever that's mutated it along the way is like causing it to be refined more and more. So you kind of have the same. It's co-mutual. It's not like just linear. Like the DNA is not just making me say something, but it's
Yeah.
like the DNA made something that's changing the
It's
DNA to
like
change the.
everybody's DNA is in communication and evolving together at once. And
Yeah,
like
and
we perceive it as like, oh my, it's only my DNA evolving at this time, or like somebody else's DNA is static and not as good, but it's like no, it's like it's a steady process. Like you're only one part of it. And I
and
mean
then
like
there's like the yeah.
even if you're like a hermit who's like, I don't want to talk to anybody, I want to go sit in the woods or whatever, like you're still participating if you're still alive somehow.
Well, yeah. I mean, you have the correspondence between like the activities of DNA and just subjectivity itself. Like your own existence happening has some impact on like the totality of existence. I would speculate.
Yeah.
I don't know for sure, but
So it's almost like you
um,
choose like how little or how big of an impact you want to make.
yeah, and that's like part of well, and that's sort of like it's still that you know genes or biodiversity or organisms or whatever or memes models that are more apt to proliferate do proliferate like
Right.
so it's like it it's not one or the other. It's isomorphic because, you know, if you're like, if this model is proliferating, then it has like a structural strength for doing just that. And I mean, and sometimes it's like a viral thing that, um, but it's like, what determines this existence is good and this existence is bad? Like, if something's killing off all the biodiversity and, you know, breaking everything down to like a, you know, nothing but itself or whatever,
Yeah.
then it's like it's the idea that biodiversity is greater than the lack of biodiversity. That is what stands to determine the goodness or badness of one thing over
Right.
another.
Yeah.
So how does that correspond with another question? Is like, where do we go from there? I feel like we've kind of
Yeah, because it's
we've hit
almost
a
like
good
it's
spot. I
human
think we've made
nature to like
progress.
make the mistake of like hunting things to extinction, and that can even include like our own thoughts and ourselves if we don't like get a handle on it. It's almost like
Right.
we
Because at
just
the same
want
time,
things, like wanting more than
like you
you
also
need.
have this idea that, yeah, so it's like excessive biodiversity. I'm just being the devil's advocate here, but excessive biodiversity could correspond to like a wandering mind. Like you're just big random jumbles of things that aren't like, it's really hard to like connect them all and get them all
Yeah,
coherent. And so like you're kind of like cutting away at, because like the thing that defines what is necessary or unnecessary, that's the fiat. That's like that's the dominant thing.
yeah,
And like, and if we're self-referencing, if we're our own point of reference, then we define everything individually based on,
yeah,
you know, this benefits me, this doesn't, this is good, this is bad. But if we communicate and share something together that is greater than the sum of its parts, then it kind of defines it.
yeah. Like it becomes
So
like
it's like,
more valuable because it's like more than like one person valuing it.
yeah. So it's like this thorn is like, this rose bush is kind of a pain in my ass because it's like right on my way, but I'm not going to cut it down, even though it will benefit me individually and right here, right now. But you kind of like have this greater thing in mind that is like, well, no, leave it up, because, and then the whole sum of that like kind of becomes its own higher level subjective point of self-reference or something.
Right.
I'm reading like Nick Land, and he kind of thinks that, um, and a lot of people think, you know, like the Buddhists, and that's why they have the
But
whole like bodhisattva idea.
yeah, then
Like,
it's kind of strange, like how like clinging strongly to like your own idea, like in the end, like it can like cut you off from being able to communicate to get to that higher level of value. So it's almost like you become like so set in like one way of thinking that you can't join in other people's share like reality to be able to share it.
right,
Like it's
and
almost like
then yeah,
you have to value another person's perspective enough to be like I don't just want to be stuck inside myself and my own way of thinking. I want to know what that person has in their head. because it might be valuable. It's like you have to value that person. You can't, or like that organism.
Right. And then I
Otherwise,
think
they're going to lose it.
and I think with all that in mind, you can kind of like, because we said, okay, reality translation, that was our kind of goalpost, and then putting a mirror in the mirror, and at the same time, it's like, well, what is like a higher level of reason or meaning behind attempting to translate each other's realities like this? You know, is it just like for our own personal benefit of like, I want to share into this, and or is it something higher that's like beckoning our activity towards its emergence? Because
Yeah,
like
yeah.
if there's something that exists that's like it's constituted by you and me, but it's not either you or me.
Yeah,
And
it's almost
it's
like it starts at the level of DNA, and then like at the other end, like where you can't see it into the future, you might as well say like, it's acting on us from that side of things.
right, because like the linear interpretation of time is kind of like based on our limited perception of time. So I mean, they have this idea called retro causality, where I mean, I'd even would like to make a card. Have you heard of retro causality? Is that something that you'd like to include?
Oh, I'm writing it down. I'm writing it all down. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm going to put in retro causality because I think that has a big thing to do with.
I'm like, I'm gonna run out of cards.
You about to run out?
Yeah.
I've got a good stockpile still.
Yeah, I'm a bit jealous of your different colors.
Yeah, I went and I really splurged on the and I got the box as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to do that.
But the different colors don't help me yet. They don't, like Brian has his categorized in some way. I don't. I just kind of maybe they'll like expose themselves to be something later on once I've made enough.
Or
So
it'll be
retro
helpful towards
causality.
like sorting. Like you could have like it one color mean like projects, and another color could mean like definitions, and another color could be like recipes or like instructions on how to do things, stuff like that.
Right. And we got 4 colors, 5 if you include white to choose from. So it's kind of, there may be some overlap. But as far as retro causality, I want to put in mind that like something emerges out of time while also um, while also having already emerged, I guess. I don't know.
It emerged on a low or like began from a lower level.
Towards, yeah, was like pushing towards and pulling from. It's kind of what I think of because, like, yeah, like you said, like it's the DNA. But at the same time, it's not like DNA came before a human, but at the same time,
Uh,
uh,
so
it took a human to exist to like perceive DNA acting at the same time, or something like that, or like DNA. The process of DNA is still occurring. You know, it's not like it
I
took
guess you could
place
say
in the
it's
millennium.
pushing towards and pulling from evolutionary forces.
Yeah, it's definitely evolutionary forces. It's definitely
Yeah.
like that's the meta of like that's what is the pushing and the pulling. Like it's like, you know, if you're jamming it forward, you're seeing like mutations and
Right.
reproduction and decomposition and all of this stuff in the system. But then, once that thing has uh, been emerged into whatever it is to emerge
Yeah,
from
and
this communication.
this is where it gets like really trippy because like it's like a this stuff is happening in our physical reality, but also in the like DNA as it's expressed as language, the mutation and the reproduction and the decomposition, it's all happening on a level of thought too. So there's like this like realm of reality that's just like it knows almost nothing about the physical world. It only experiences itself as thought, and it's just like it's gathering information from the senses, but like like inside our own mind, there's like a section of ourself that like it doesn't really know what it's like to touch something because you've never actually touched something. Like it's only an illusion or sensation. So it's like you've got this language that's trying to basically jump the barrier of like having to spread only through like genetic recombination. And in that in that environment, it's almost like its own ecosystem of language where sort of like thoughts and ideas evolve as their own sort of organism, I guess,
Yeah, definitely,
or their own
definitely.
kinds of organisms.
Like that. That's the threshold. Like there's this threshold where like the kind of information that's like being compounded by DNA, like the kind of information that DNA is like it's chemical. It's like this chemical stuff that like, oh, it's like you can see how it codes, you know, like the way that it is, you can directly see how it guides its own components into developing into what it has coded itself to be. And then, that threshold goes from DNA like all the way up to the neurological, which neurons are sharing information in like the same way, slightly modulated. There's like electricity and shit involved. But then you have this threshold that goes into like subjectivity and then thought, which it only seems like it's some totally different thing because of that threshold.
Yeah, so
Which,
it's almost like you could say that like even like DNA is thought, like the
yeah, for
whole
sure. I
universe
mean,
is
if
like
your threshold is, depending on what your threshold is, like certain things are material, certain things are mental. If your threshold changes, then certain things are mental, or like everything is both. Every
yeah,
occurrence is both material and mental,
yeah,
and you just kind of have like it's like it's relative to the thresholds, what is considered material or physical.
So you have almost like an ecosystem of representations.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, yeah, because I mean, everything is kind of representing the processes and information that was used to build it.
Right.
And we are
And I
representatives
mean,
of
like,
it.
and I like the idea of it as like an ecosystem because then it's like if you bring it back to like the hierarchy of thoughts, you have like predatory thoughts and you might have like predatory ideas.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if you can kind of like take the hierarchy and then use like, because we're also using like fractal correspondence to like, DNA to organisms to thought structures to emergent this and that, kind of like equating them with each other and like kind of dissolving that threshold of differentiation.
Yeah.
And then that's sort of like dissolving the hierarchical structure too, because like that hierarchy is like that's defining our boundaries. Like, and if your boundary is like I have my thoughts and then I have my reality, and then you're kind of using what we're doing here to like alter that into a way where it's like,
Yeah.
it's more equality because it's like my thoughts aren't higher or lower. It's like it's more equality. It's just, you know,
Yeah.
through this provisional, arbitrary fucking ideation of difference that only serves to like continue the proliferation. So I feel like it's a good way to like dissolve your boundaries and
Yeah.
change your hierarchy. It's kind of like, yeah, like take down the fucking monarchy and you know make shit more democratic and more like free.
Yeah.
So, and we've got retro causality sort of uh, having its own relationship to everything that we're talking about. So it's kind of like a background card to me. And maybe a pure fractal correspondence. Shit.
It's kind of like really weird because it's almost like, we think of it as like, oh, look what we're doing to the planet, but then it's like it's on another level. You could look at it as like, look at what the living planet is like learning about itself.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, our exchange and communication is like,
Like you could almost think of the Earth as like, it's just like one organism that's just like beating itself up.
yeah, definitely, definitely, and it's kind of like generating new ideas, which dissolve old ideas. If thought structures emerging that are, dissolving other possibilities of, it's like once you like kind of like prove to yourself something in your mind, you can't like revert back to like believing that Santa Claus is real or something like that,
Yeah.
In the sense that he's like some guy that climbs out a chimney, you get different ideas of so it's like, yeah, so we had that at first. That was
Yeah.
like alive and then it was like cut down, but it kind of opened the doorway to. But yeah, we're definitely at every level. It's like it's beating itself up.
Yeah.
But what allows it to stop beating itself up? To me, it's like coherence.
Right.
Like if we're coherent in our identity with It's like if you're sharing the DNA with a tree, it's like if we're coherent identity with the earth and the universe, and just break it down to like reality, you know. It's
Yeah.
like you don't have to identify like with just the earth, because then there's a thing that envelops that, you know.
Yeah.
And if you just take it all the way down and you're like, or all the way up, and sort of like you bring yourself in coherence with everything else, which I guess requires communication, you know, like this type of. It's like, how are you gonna? Hmm,
Yeah.
do you have anything to add to that? I'm kind of.
Um, I guess I like the idea of where it's going with like you know, the coherence allowing like the earth and us to like stop beating ourselves up and to develop like a more like harmonious like identity, but also like a more harmonious ecosystem.
Right.
So,
And at what point? What if we just like? I feel like there's something to be established about, because if destructive ideology is the earth beating itself up like in an attempt to get to know itself, and
right.
you have ideology and biodiversity, like there's a direct causal relationship that you know like the nature of it is all defined by like the thresholds of the hierarchy of thought, and so like
It's
we can
almost like the
change that,
whole
we
earth
can.
has like this weird like um drug addicted like self-destructive like pattern going on. It's like we have to cure our species.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, shit, it goes down to the human level, and then you have like the earth level. So yeah, it's like if you can identify that whole issue, then
Yeah. And I mean, like, I don't mean like cure the species as in like, you know, there's something necessarily wrong with our DNA. It is what it is, but it's like we have to become aware of our DNA and I guess like of our own consciousness before we can like see how it might add up on the next level.
okay.
Or not so much to see how it's going to add up on the next level, but like what it's going to mean for you in your life. Um,
Sort of like how if you learn to kind of read the patterns of what's going on effectively, you can sort of tell what's going to emerge. Like if
yeah,
I
yeah.
continue on this destructive path, I'm going
Yeah,
to end up like.
it's like doing it without defining it. It's like you can see that like you're headed to the spot that like you roughly want to get to, even if you can't like put it all into words because you're moving towards something that like feels natural to you, I guess.
Mm,
Mm.
yeah.
I mean, I guess like, you know, like it feels natural to everybody to survive, and that's what everybody's doing is trying to survive, but it's like they're doing it in a way that's self-destructive to both themselves and other people and other creatures. So it's like you have
Right.
to master the survival mechanism so that you're not, you know, blowing it up out of proportion, you're not having panic attacks that make you do stupid things. You're not having like anger problems that like put you in trouble. You know, it's just trying to get a handle on like your own DNA basically.
And like if you kind of, I think uh, it, the way that we've set it up, like it's nobody's fault. Like if someone's acting self-destructively, like that is like in a retrocausal, fractally corresponding sense, like that is an expression of the earth
Right,
like
yeah, exactly.
being destructive towards itself. Like, but also the humans as a group make their individual decisions emerge as the earth being destructed towards itself. But
Yeah.
it's also like it's the earth's fault that we're like this, but it's also our fault that the earth is like this.
Yeah.
So it's like we can't blame anybody, but we can sort of like use like our model
Yeah, like
and,
we can see
and
that
our
like our system
communication.
is not working for ourselves, so it's like, we have to fix our own model of reality and the way
Right.
that
And
we
then like
respond to reality.
yeah. And so like uh yeah, instead of like pointing blame or whatever, we just sort of like kind of open up and you know achieve a communication that yeah kind of allows us to sort of get a scope of perspective that is sufficient to like, behave in a constructive way. And then I guess like I feel like if you kind of get to that point conceptually where like you kind of loop around, okay, like the model is this DNA and like uh, the same way that the DNA is, you know, going up in layers to find a human and then like the world, and you have like this mimetic DNA
Right.
that's sort of like defining how we're acting. It's like it's like a higher layer of that informational expression that we can share the way that a human can share their DNA with a tree and then like co-mutually
Yeah,
grow without harming each other.
yeah. And I guess like a part of the model too, it's like it's even how we like structure like spaces online. It starts to affect how our DNA gets expressed because
For sure. I mean, like,
you're changing the rules of the ecosystem, right?
yeah, I mean, I feel like your model would involve like aesthetics as well. Like, it kind of defines like what we think looks cool and what we think is like efficient and doing things in certain ways. And but it's like that's kind of like a fringe that doesn't necessarily have to be. I feel like there's this core, like you just have to like communicate this core, and then it's like all of this fringe like differentiation. Like if every neuron were, if it was like a perfect like pentagram or something instead of just like a bunch of squiggly, they're all like a little different. So it's sort of they can communicate with each other, but they're not the exact
Yeah.
same. But I think we've kind of
We've covered a lot.
we've covered a lot. I think we've covered a lot.
A
We
lot
kind
more.
of hit.
We covered a lot more than I thought we would. And like my stack of cards is like big now.
Yeah, I've got some good. And I feel like
Actually,
after what's
I
that?
fell asleep at one point the other day and I dreamt that I ate the cards.
I remember you saying that you're eating them like a sandwich.
Yeah.
It's I mean, the symbolism of that is up to you, but that does sound pretty cool.
Yeah. I have weird dreams like that. So it's like my dreams kind of like map to what I'm doing, like to a not very normal degree sometimes, or it doesn't seem
Yeah,
that normal to me. Yeah, it's like it becomes like I'll dream something and then I'll wake up and do it, and it's like
like you're like internalizing the information, or
yeah, or it's like it even happens sometimes like before I know what it means. Like something weird will happen in a dream, and then like something will happen in reality, and it's like wow, that was too similar to what I just dreamt about.
um, hell yeah. Well, I would say that shit. I would say that I need to run this for another couple of minutes because I'm thinking that we're at a good stopping point
Yeah.
for now because
Yeah. I'm getting pretty tired and I
I
gotta
also have to
do stuff.
have some things to do. But I think we made some really good progress. Had a good conversation,
Yeah, it was great talking to
and it
you.
kind of showed me more about how we can use the game because like we're like agreeing on terms and things that are like we're referencing later, and it really puts them like right there instead of yeah, it's like it's building on itself to
Yeah,
create
and
like a deeper understanding. So it was a good time.
yeah,
Let's
definitely.
you know let's continue another day.
For sure. Yeah, it was nice talking
And
to
you're
you.
recording, so yeah, it's nice talking to you as well.
Yeah.
And nice. I think I talked to your cat for a second, so
Yeah.
nice
All
talking to
right.
the cat. So you
Yeah, I
got the
don't know
recording. You're
how,
the host. I don't know what's gonna
yeah.
happen with that.
I don't know how to stop recording, to be honest. Or like,
Yeah, me neither.
does it just
I
save
haven't.
automatically? Do I need to save it to something?
Hopefully it's going to Brian's computer. I don't know. Anyways, I'm gonna leave and go full close. You have a
Yeah,
nice day.
okay. Yeah, you too, you too.
Bye bye.